Hello, my name is Mai. I'm going to present today a medical low back pain physical rehabilitation dataset for human body movement analysis. This dataset comes in the context of the Keraal Project, which stands for Kinesiotherapy and Rehabilitation for Assisted Ambient Living. It proposes a robot coach for physical rehabilitation. Our goal is to increase the time patients spend exercising while alleviating the lack of time a physiotherapist can spend monitoring a patient during their months-long care. We also want to reduce difficulties of transport to the rehabilitation center. Our proposition is thus an embodied training companion to entice motivation through advice understandable by humans. So this project Keraal was funded by the European Union through the FP7 project correctness. It was a collaboration between Research and Diagnosis and Generation Project. We propose the humanoid robot copy, which is open source, as a robot coach.
Hello, my name is Poppy.
So the robot copy can demonstrate movements orally and by
Raise the left arm,
demonstration.
stretch, while inhaling. Slowly bend to the right while exhaling to stretch the left flank. Straighten by inhaling, then lower the arm while exhaling. Raise the right arm, stretch, while inhaling.
So it can analyze the movements through the Kinect. And here you can see that the trunk is still very straight and not leaning to the left.
The workout exercise could be done better. Try to lean a little bit more to the left side. It's your turn.
So the goal is to provide feedback for the patient to improve his movement. So you can see that on this attempt, the patient is actually leaning to the left and is doing it right.
The workout exercise has been properly done.
So as shown, the goal is to have a robot coach to give demonstrations to patients, analyze the movement, and be able to give feedback to improve the movements. In this article, what we propose is a data set of human movements so that the robot can learn the exercise specifications from that data set. Our goal is to have a movement analysis both by body part and temporal segments so that the feedback is useful enough to improve the movement of patients. Thus, we identified 4 challenges in rehabilitation movement analysis. The first challenge is motion assessment. The robot needs to assess an observed motion by detecting if the rehabilitation exercise is correctly performed or not. Thus, our dataset needs to have a global evaluation under the form of a label, correct or incorrect. The second challenge is error recognition. We need to classify the observed error among a set of known errors so as to explain and give feedback. Our data needs to have labels of the error, but also indicate if the error is significant or small. The third challenge is spatial localization of the error. We need to identify which body part is responsible for the error. So our data needs to identify the body part causing the error. The fourth challenge is temporal localization of the error. we need to detect the temporal segment where the detected error occurred along the sequence. Thus, each recording needs to indicate which time window the error occurred. Our dataset comprises recordings for low back pain rehabilitation, so we propose 3 exercises centered on spine stretching. The first one is a breathing exercise with the upper limbs flexed at 90 degrees at shoulder and elbow. The second exercise proposes a left and right lateral bending of the trunk. And the third exercise, left rotation of the trunk, followed by the right rotation of the trunk. This dataset was acquired with 3 groups of participants, both patients and healthy participants. The patients were recruited during a clinical study where patients were performing rehabilitation exercises. We recruited 12 patients aged 18 to 70 years. They trained 30 minutes a day during 3 weeks, and the clinical trials lasted during 2 years, from which we extracted 1,881 recordings of patients. So this constitutes the groups 1 of patients, and part of the group 1 are in the group 1A, so their recordings are also annotated by 2 medical annotators. So each recording comprises a video, RGB, and from that video we can extract the skeletons using open pose, place pose, and alpha pose. We also provide Kinect skeleton that was recorded. With the healthy patients, we have the group 2 who were asked to carry out the exercises in the same conditions as the patients. And again, part of that set of recordings was annotated by 2 medical annotators. Finally, we have group 3 who are healthy participants who are asked specifically to simulate errors. For these patients, we have the RGB videos with the open pose, place pose, and alpha pose skeletons, along with the Kinect skeleton, but we also have the Viken recordings, which are the precise positions of the joints. Our datasets comprises a total of 2,622 recordings, with 1,881 recordings of patients and 741 recordings of healthy patients. With this dataset, we wanted to test the challenges we identified. For the first challenge, which is rehabilitation motion assessment, we tested 2 different algorithms pertaining to 2 different families of algorithms. The first one is Gaussian Mixture Model on Riemannian manifolds, and the second is a LSTM autoencoder. We showed here the results of the classification of each recording as correct or incorrect. And we plotted here the confusion matrix of error detection for each exercise with each of the algorithms. So you can see that the confusion matrices do look alike independently of the algorithm. The most common error is the false positive. So it classifies as correct, incorrect motions. This comes from the fact that our classes are much imbalanced, as are most datasets on physical rehabilitation. For the second challenge, which is error classification, We used the same algorithms and reported the recognition errors for a model using a GMM followed by a SVM to classify the error. You can see that the accuracy is pretty low, ranging from 25 to 33. The classification accuracy are a bit better with LSTM, ranging from 31 to 53, but again, not very satisfying. If we analyze further, we can look at the confusion matrices of the error detection for both models. So we notice that the majority of correct sequences are not recognized using the GMM-based features with the SVM classifier in comparison to the LSTM classifier, which is more accurate to recognize correct sequences. Nevertheless, the LSTM classifier is not able to efficiently recognize performed errors for all exercises. This especially explains the lower accuracy obtained for the flank stretch exercise, which you have here with a low accuracy. This dataset was part of the Project Keraal, which was testing a clinical trial in a double-blind setting during 2 years, where we recruited 31 patients aged between 18 to 70, and half of them were training with a robot coach, as seen in the first video, and half of them were following usual care. And from the patients using the robot, we recorded the data set. This clinical trial also offers results in terms of medical health and acceptability. In terms of participant perception, we showed through our questionnaires that the patients were willing to use the system. In terms of primary outcome, the clinical outcomes were compared between groups with a student t-test. And it showed non-inferiority of the robot coach. So none of the clinical outcomes differed between groups if we compare between day 0 and day 21 of their care. In terms of secondary outcomes, we assessed in terms of lumbar pain, disability, and fear and beliefs, and there was no differences in the number of side effects. So the robot-led sessions were safe. We also asked physiotherapists, and it showed a good assessment of the acceptability of the proposition of the system for home use. The usability of our system will be improved in the future. In further projects, we also showed that instead of the Kinect or Vicon systems, a webcam, a simple monocular RGB webcam, can be used. We can also adapt the feedback to each of the patient's physical limitations. What we proposed in that study is a representation using shared Gaussian process latent variable model. And we can extend the model to adapt the assessment of rehabilitation exercises to each patient's physical limitations. To conclude, our Keraal datasets comes from our identification of 4 challenges of automatic coaching of physical rehabilitation exercises. First, using motion assessment, error classification, spatial localization, and finally, temporal localization. Our dataset proposes 2,622 recordings in total, including 1,881 of patients on long-term during 3 weeks of care. It also offers detailed annotations on each of the 4 challenges. The recordings comprise 3D skeleton sequences captured by a Kinect and RGB videos from which we could extract skeletons using 2D and 3D human pose estimation algorithms based on deep learning. So our Keraal dataset is unique because it is the only benchmarking set with clinical patients on long term and with labels provided by 2 physiotherapists for our 4 challenges. You can download the dataset from the website and check the code from the GitHub page.